Today we sit down with a special guest who's gotten to see the gritty side of life. He's an LAPD detective and his name is Jim Nolan. He's worked the Vice unit, he's partnered with the FBI in some of his investigations, and he's seen some of the craziest things that someone can see on the job. Pimps, prostitutes, death, murder, poverty, and more. And he gets to take us on a journey through his life experiences. So today, folks, we sit down with Jim Nolan. Hello, I'm Tommy G, and this is the Tommy G Show. And today we have a very special guest. We have Jim Nolan, an LAPD detective, a guy that has done things that I can't even believe are you got the nerves to do. So let me do that one more time. Hello, folks. This is Tommy G. Welcome back to the Tommy G Show. We're here with Jim Nolan, an LAPD detective, a very brave man, a man that has seen a lot of stuff, I would imagine. And so before we get into everything, let's just get into your background, especially in the LA. I know you were a cop in New York as well, but describe to the audience your experience in LA and what are the different things you've covered.
Thank you, Tommy. It's a real pleasure to be here. This is going to be a fun one, I feel. I'm going on about almost 3 decades in law enforcement.
Wow.
And in that time, I worked NYPD, and I currently work as a detective supervisor here in LA. And I'd had a great opportunity to work various different assignments, and we were talking off camera. I got to work as a undercover vice operator. I got to work a unit called Crash, which is an anti-gang unit.
Wow.
I got to work a career criminal unit. I worked, what else? It's been a lot.
What stands out already is I can't imagine how nervous I would be every morning waking up to do your job. Like anything undercover to me would sound absolutely terrifying. Walk me through, I guess, maybe a story and experience you've had in that Vice unit, either or Crash, the gangland or the gangbuster or the Vice undercover. Like walk us through a story to give us a feeling of what it is to do what you did.
Oh man, you put me on the spot with these. Let me think of a time. One of the weirdest times were working Vice. We ended up arresting this. Usually, unfortunately, most of the women are just really worn out. When talking before, just physically and mentally, it takes such a toll on them. It's a horrible
because these are
crime.
Prostitutes.
Yeah, just they go through so much abuse from pimps and Johns and what have you. And there was this one, she was really, really gorgeous. She was from Vegas, and she just stood out. She looked like she wasn't a prostitute. And we ended up arresting her like 3 or 4 times. It was ridiculous. She was horrible at prostitution, and or just horrible at getting caught. And then when we finally got to know her, like, hey, why are you doing this? You don't look like the typical prostitute. And she had an addiction to consumerism, to buying things. She was obsessed with buying things and couldn't afford it on her own, on her regular 9 to 5, and resorted to prostitution to feed that addiction, which was really sad. And then as we got to know her more, her dad ended up being, we found out he was a police commissioner up in Oregon. So she came from a rock solid family, good parents, and she was very smart, and she had wits about her, and like I said, good-looking girl, but she couldn't get away from buying things, and she would do this, come from Vegas, do the Vegas thing, and come to LA, and it was just weird. That really stood out to me from all the. Usually, it's like an addiction in different ways of mostly drug addiction and physical abuse and what have you, and. I hope, I don't know where she is now, but I hope she solved that problem. So because, the prostitution life, it doesn't last long for these girls.
So one of the things we were talking about before we got started was that we can't believe that a lot of these women are in a position that they're giving all of their money to a pimp. Was she a pimpless prostitute? Is that how she was able to spend all the money on consumer stuff?
Yeah, she was one of the rare ones. She was like an independent contractor at the time. It was all like Craigslist and all these different websites and all that.
So she wasn't walking the street?
No, she was, strictly doing the internet game and all that. But 99% of these girls, they're giving up all their money to a pimp, which is just crazy when you think about it. You're putting so much of their life and soul and blood and everything else into what they're doing and getting zero in return.
How does that possibly work? I guess, can you describe maybe the psychology? Because I think a lot of us listening to this would be like, how the heck are these women doing all of the work? They're in all these dangerous positions. They're getting beaten. They're getting abused by the customers, by their own pimp. Like, how is it the arrangement is such that they are giving away 100% of the money?
The pimps call it the game. And the game for them is to find vulnerable women that is seeking something, seeking a father figure, seeking some type of family. And they're already broken already, a lot of them. And so they're coming in 50% broken down, and the pimp will do the rest. So that they're in search of that need for that desire of having a family. So the other girls that are in his stable and the guy, provide that. Everyone, we're humans. We just want to be loved. So they're giving that love, but then at the same time, they're just being broken down psychologically. And these guys are so good at manipulating people that these girls will give them all their money and all their time and all their effort just for this rat bastard pimp, to show them some kind of attention and some kind of affection, which they never got as children. And
So, because I'm assuming you've come across a lot of pimps in your time as well, are all of them just absolute dirtbags? Are there any guys that are actually trying to, hey, I'm going to protect you well, I'm going to try and make sure you're healthy? Like, are all of that, like, walk me through the average profile of a pimp.
Yeah, I mean, they're providing shelter for them, they're providing food.
So they're renting an apartment for them or something like that?
Yeah, they're allowing them to live with them, or, providing some kind of means. So, food, shelter, affection, even though it's, distorted affection, but it's all for them. It's not, they're not doing it because they want to help this person. It's all just to suck them dry of their money and of their skills and what have you. So the girls, maybe she's getting taken off the streets or some kind of foster home or whatever, but it's gonna break it down even more. It's not for a good purpose. So it's an ulterior motive of just ripping their souls out, and then once they have nothing else to give, then they're thrown out.
It seems like part of the game is to also get them hooked on some sort of substance. That seems like a key part of this puzzle for the pimp.
Well, if they're not addicted to drugs already, they're gonna, the horrors of going through prostitution, of, having continuous sex with strangers and just creeps, that they're gonna have to look to, solve that problem of that torment, of that depression. So drugs are always available, and they're gonna probably take that and try to ease that pain a little bit, and then that makes them even dulls their senses even more to get them out there. Like, if the girl's tired, just take some of this, take some of that, and then get them back out on the strip.
So is it lucrative to be a pimp? If you have, I would imagine, 3 to 5 women and it's $1,000 a night, that sounds like it's a decent income, but the guys that I observed didn't seem very wealthy to me.
They're really not. They're living in ghetto neighborhoods that are just, the ones that we've encountered. I mean, there's very few real successful pimps that are, living high lifestyles. I mean, you'll see some of the documentaries out there, but those are like the 1%ers, the outliers and all that. But, it's like anything else. Your average drug dealer is not living in Scarface type style mansions. Yes, are there, extremely successful people out there? Yes. But for the most part, your everyday average drug dealer and pimp, they're not making a whole lot of money.
They were just barely scraping by.
Yeah.
We talked to a pimp yesterday that he said, because I said, it really seems like you're not treating women well. I mean, it's the obvious statement, but you can't say it too heavily because they're in the car with you and you don't want anything crazy to happen. But why do you think you treat women that way? Like, have you ever had a soft, loving, intimate relationship with a woman? Like, the most beautiful thing a woman can provide for you is that warm feeling. And I think he got his heart broken by a girl when he was 12 or 13. He said, since then, I've never loved a hoe. I've never let myself be vulnerable again. And what would you say is the kind of the psychological profile of the pimp? Like, how do they come to be? Do they have a certain pattern in their childhood? And what leads them to do something that to me is just so obviously dirty, evil, bad? Like, what leads someone to that place?
I mean, anyone that's involved in, these heinous type of crimes, they're shattered individuals. They're coming from broken homes. The people that they do have around them, either, friends or family, they usually pimps themselves or in some kind of, deranged criminal activity. So they're victims as well for a lot of them because they're just product of your environment. If you're growing up in a horrible environment and these are all the people that you're surrounded with, you're like, okay, this is normal behavior. The abnormal becomes normal. So they start adopting those behavioral lifestyles, which is horrendous for kids. That's all they see. And then you have the glamorized, through media and what have you.
I'm a hustler. I'm balling. I'm flexing.
Trying to, softball it where it's, we're not, slave masters. We're, not manipulators. Yeah, we're hustlers, So it softens it up a little bit.
We're giving the women a career.
Yeah. It's, just they're fooling themselves if they really believe that. And they don't. They know what they're doing. They know it's wrong. And so it's, abused people abusing other people. It's just that cycle of violence.
I almost feel sorry I feel sorry for everyone involved, but even the pimps, because I noticed a lot of them, they were constantly drinking, constantly smoking. I don't know if they were on perks or other things as well, but these guys were numbing themselves to their own existence. And so would you say that's a common attribute to the lifestyle as well?
Yeah, well, they're soft, very soft individuals. Almost every time I've arrested a pimp, and we did one not that long ago, and they are the biggest whiners and complainers and criers. The minute the cuffs go on, they turn into like an 11-year-old boy, and they just start crying and calling for their mother and just whining about everything. They just very soft individuals that portray something to be very hard and masculine when it's the complete opposite. It's just the mere shell of a mortal, and they're just.
So it's a broken child that chose a career that's horrible.
Correct. That's what I've seen.
What about the John side of things? Because one of the insights we got is that, so there's a fair amount of older white guys. It's a fair amount of Mexican guys. A lot of, both in Chicago and in LA, the black pimps and black prostitutes said, we don't do black customers. It's too dangerous. There's too much robbing. There's too much added nonsense that makes it a headache. What can you tell us about the profile of the John? Are they married men? Are they just lonely men? Are they older? Are they younger? What can you tell us about that?
That's a good question. I mean, it scans the boundaries of so many. I mean, I worked Vice in Hollywood and in like the Venice area, and I came across everybody. I mean, A-list celebrities, priests, some guys in law enforcement, firemen. I mean, one guy was a valet driver. I'll never forget that one. We're following this girl. It was real dry in Venice. There was no one out there. And we're like, all right, we're going to wrap it up, call it a day. And we're following this girl, and she kind of goes off the track. And the track is kind of like, just the street for people that don't know, the common area of whatever, where there's highly prostituted areas where activities taking place. So she starts walking off the track, and she starts walking towards this Italian restaurant. And then we see her talking with the valet driver. I'm like, the hell is she doing? She lost or whatever, just shooting shit with someone. And then we see the valet driver start walking to her car with the prostitute. I'm like, no way. She's going to turn a trick in the parking lot with the valet. So this guy, obviously he's working. He's not looking for prostitutes. It was just an opportunity of, oh, wow, there's some chick and there's a prostitute. I got some spare time. Let me throw down.
Until he got caught, that was probably such a fantastic setup for him. He was getting paid on the job and then could go over to a car and do that.
And it wasn't in his car, too. It was just a car he actually valeted, which was
could you imagine
horrendous.
picking that back up and you're like, something just doesn't smell right in this car.
Oh, my God. I mean, that was the true crime of doing it in someone else's car. You doing it in your car or whatever. And then, so the manager comes out, what the hell's going on? And, we have to let him know. I'm like, And so I wondered if the person whose actually car it was ever found out.
So I'm going to ask you the if you were mayor question in a few different categories, but let's start with prostitution, because I know that there's a lot of ways to look at this. You can be make it heavily criminalized and just let's clean up the streets, let's round everyone up and get them off. But we know that this is a profession that's never going to go away. Do you make it completely legal and it'll make it hypothetically a lot safer for the women? They can manage things in a different way. How would you tackle the problem of sex work and prostitution?
It's a good question. My existence kind of is like a libertarian. Do what you want as long as it doesn't bother anyone or damage anyone. So the Nevada, the way they have it set up,
with brothels, right?
Yeah, with legal brothels. I'm like, okay, that seems like it's working or whatever. But then you have the other side of me of like, is this really good for society? Are we propelling ourselves? Are we evolving as people if we're going to allow this behavior to go on? Because even though that it's legalized and it's safe or whatever on both sides, it's still taking a toll on people. So I know it's there. They have the freedom to do that, but then I'm just constantly weighing it morally. I'm like, is this good for society? And does this propel us forward? I really don't know the answer to that, but having it in a controlled, safe environment where it's regulated, obviously it's the way to go instead of people rolling the dice on the street and, girls putting their lives in the hands with pimps and what have you. So if I had to pick one, the Nevada one seems like it's the way to go. I never thought that I would see drugs legalized before prostitution. I figured that was a ground ball.
Yeah.
But, we come from like a Puritan, environment and existence in this country. So I think that'll probably be a long time from now still.
So you would take the same approach with drugs too. Like I know that, I don't know if it's Portugal or Spain or there's some places around the globe that if you want to take heroin, you can go into a clinical setting, you can get administered the dose, you get set up with a job program. And I think it was some strong percentage, like 80% or more people on that program self-lowered their own dose to the point where they kind of got off of it because it was a safer way to do it. Do you think that's an approach that we should try in America, and maybe we try it one city at a time to see if we can expand it to the other cities? But the drug legalization thing, and then is there any drug that you would say, okay, fentanyl, obviously, we're going to leave that off the list, or how would you approach that?
Again, it's that balancing act. Are we encouraging people by making it legal? But then I look at the other side of, look how we're dealing with it now. We're like the largest consumer of drugs and the largest penal facilities in the world.
By far.
So, obviously we're not doing it right. We have to change it up. So I'm open to exploring new options and, looking at other methods. So, but then, it's like, are you just, like you said, fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine? I mean, those are hard drugs that are altering people's brains. So sure, you could do it in a safe environment. We could monitor you, but again, is that propelling us as a species? Are we becoming better from this? I don't know, but I am open to trying it and looking for creative ideas.
Vices are something that are never going to go away. There's always going to be people, and there's so many outlets for it, like whether it's porn or prostitution or going to the strip club or drugs. There's always going to be that short-term dopamine chase for people that are feeling unfulfilled, or just, even a strong person, there's a chink in the armor, they have a bad day, they go down the wrong path. Knowing what human nature is, I think it is an interesting question, how we move forward, because clearly it seems with the war on drugs, with how sex work has gone, that the time is ripe for some new experiments to be happening. Our current model clearly hasn't worked. Do you think that it's something where you let, if someone's a far left or a far right or independent, that you just city by city, hey, test out your own experiments and let's see how the numbers do it. And then if it works here, we expand it over there. Like, how would you approach that, or what do you think about that?
What's interesting about that, while I'm thinking about that, about how vices aren't going away. When in my generation, anti-smoking started to become a big thing, and we were bombarded with ads and things at school, and how smoking was bad for you, and generations previous to that, I mean, they smoked on airplanes, they smoked in movie theaters. I mean, it was smoke in hospitals. They were doing it everywhere. And then through intense education and anti-smoking ads, it became almost zero. And it started up again, I think. But from when I grew up till now, I mean, if I smell a cigarette now, I'm like, who the hell's smoking? Like, it's so rare now. So I think education really does matter. I think if you start young and you indoctrinate people or give them the platform of, hey, this is the long-term effects, you can change generations. Like, yeah, there's always going to be some kind of vice that people are going to try to escape their everyday reality. But if you could limit that, I think that would be a huge thing. So I think we can do that with drugs and other crutches of other vices that are self-destructive. So I don't think we could give up on that aspect, because it has been proven, like I said, through smoking, that it does work. It does take time, but as Americans, we're always looking for quick fixes. Throw this guy in jail, do this, do that. So
we have to be comfortable with the idea that this could take decades, generations to change.
Yeah, we have to take holistic views and then look long term, like other cultures do, like in the Asian culture. And they're looking at 20 years, 50 years down the road, and here in the U.S., we're looking at 2 to 4 year election cycles. So people could say, well, I did this within the last administration. And it's not about them, it's about us. We have to start legislation for the future, for the next generations, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. But
how cool would it be if we could get to a place politically where, let's say when Obama was in office, that Obama started an initiative and then Trump gets in office, like, Obama started this great initiative and I've furthered it, and when I pass the baton to Biden, we're going to keep going. Like, that kind of continuity is the only way that I think it could go forward. And I think on the flip side of that, the reason places like China are able to have that 50-year view is because guys like Xi Jinping are in power for so long that they get to have that focus, and they don't have the divisive back and forth that we have.
Yes.
But that is the hack. How do we get them to treat each other as teammates and not rivals?
Right. I mean, it's Team America. When we win, that's a win for the country, not for just one guy, one party. We become so indentured to this tribalism, and it's not doing anything. Because like you said, someone does something for 8 years, then 2 terms, and the next guy comes in and wipes the slate and does his own thing, and then we're back to zero.
Don't you feel like the majority of people feel how we feel? And we have the understanding that something is afoot here. There's a lot of nonsense in the air, and we could be so much better than what we are, but we kind of don't have the mechanisms to control the power, and so that's why we're kind of stuck.
Yeah, in a 2-party system, I mean, it's how do you do that? It's kind of like if you went into a restaurant and they had a menu and they only had 2 things on the menu, would that place survive? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know too many restaurants that have 2 items on there, but that's what we're being offered in our political system, and it's horrible.
It is kind of, I think Jesse Ventura coined this. It's the Republicans versus the Democrats. It's kind of gangland on a national scale. From what I understand, and I've gone to a lot of dangerous neighborhoods around the country, LA is really one of the few places that is still holding on to the old-fashioned gang mentality, where there's more like the Crips, the Bloods, whereas if you go to Milwaukee or St. Louis, it's more like little cliques that are just running around. They're not affiliated as part of a gigantic gang organization. Walk people through maybe where it's gone from when you started to the current gang outlook in LA. What does it look like?
It's interesting that you say that. I never thought of that. But yeah, I mean, you could say this is the origin of the street gangs was in Los Angeles. So that's going to take a long time to change. Is it so indentured? I mean, I've arrested people where you see the grandfather's a gang member.
Wow.
The grandmother, then the father, and then all the kids and uncles. So it's like, wow, like, how do you stop that? How do you cut that chain?
Did it used to be more positive? Because I remember reading, I think it was a book called Hoop Dreams about a basketball player from the Cabrini Greens, and it seemed like some of the gang organizations were a little bit more community oriented at the time. Like they'd put on block parties, they'd kind of keep the housing projects more safe. And I don't know if that's just a romanticized view that was pushed, but is there anything positive these gangs are bringing to the table in this current stage? And do they used to bring anything positive and that's just kind of been wiped away?
It's that's kind of cover. It seems like it's kind of like motorcycle gangs when they do Christmas toy drives and those type of things. In my neighborhood, it was heavily populated with mafia, particularly Gambino crime family, and then like every 4th of July and all these different events, they would do something for the neighborhood.
So it's kind of a PR stunt.
It's a PR stunt. It's cover of like, hey, we're just regular guys. We're a club, we're an association, and But meanwhile, everyone's car is getting stolen, and it's tied to this crime family, or the dope that's being shuffled around. It's tied to these guys. They're destroying the neighborhood, but it's providing on a superficial. Hey, it is just like likable guys doing stuff for the neighborhood, which is a bunch of BS. But the people that are joining, again, it goes back to that thirst for belonging to something that's greater than yourself. And if you have no other outlets, that's what you're going to gravitate toward. But I do see it being diminished heavily through the power of the internet. Pre-internet, all you knew was your 4 square blocks around you. So if you're in a crap neighborhood surrounded with knuckleheads, you're just going to do knucklehead stuff. But having access to the internet, that gives people a portal to, depending on what you're looking up, but it shows you an alternative lifestyle that's out there that you can, see how other cultures are operating in different cities, what's available education-wise and culturally, and you could see that there's things other than what you're surrounded with. So I think that's really limited a lot of the gang activity in LA from what I've seen. It's not as bad as the 90s.
That 4 square block mentality is interesting you bring that up, because I remember talking to kids in Milwaukee from the hood that had never been to Bradford Beach, which is the most common beach, and it's 10 minutes away. I mean, they can easily get there. Or I was talking to my friend, Certified Trapper, who's really making a name for himself in the rap world, but also was in the streets. And, I'm like, what does an op look like to you? And he's like, well, you could be from the next block type shit, and that's an op. And I'm like, what a small view of the world. And I think, man, if there's one like little magic wand I could wave, like if I can make reading cool around the country, because I think laws are universal. What works in one place can work in another place oftentimes, but so that you can, because reading transforms you into, you can learn the life of what it is to be an Italian guy from the 1600s. It can be, what does Harry Potter look like? It just puts you in so many different shoes, and it broadens your world so much that I think the really square block mentality of this is what my life is would break through a little bit more.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what got me out here from New York was reading about the West Coast culture and everything else. So again, that was like that portal to another world of, oh, wow, there's other things going on that I aren't aware of, and through books. So yeah, huge proponent in reading.
So,
and with library, I mean, it's for free.
Yes.
And the same thing with the beaches. I've talked to so many kids in South Central that haven't been to the beach.
In LA.
I know. And it's, it's less than 10 miles away. One bus could get you there, and it's for free. The beach is for free. You got a towel, and all you have to do is, no one comes back from the beach and says, I had a bad day. It's the cheapest form of medication, of mental and physical, has so much goodness comes out from the beach. And like you said, they just know those 4 square blocks, and paradise is very close, and so many don't grasp it.
So you were a police officer in New York, and you read a book that you started learning about the culture of LA, and you decided, like, is this a challenge you wanted to take on? I'm going to move here and take on this challenge.
Yeah, through like surfing, BMX, music, different criminal cultures out there. Just was fascinated by the West Coast. I was like, yeah, this sounds a lot better than what I'm experiencing out here in New York. It's something different.
So you started applying to LA County police officer operations and got transferred.
Just one department, yeah. Just one department. Got lucky the first day in LA, back to the beach, was swimming in Zuma Beach. And I was swimming, there was dolphins like 20 feet away from me. I've never seen a dolphin before. I was like, oh, wow, this is a special place. This is where I want to be.
And that's when you decided to make the next move and start your next chapter.
Yes. Yeah, I was like, this is, okay, I get it. I get it why so many people move out here.
You saw some dolphins in LA, made the move here, and you've been involved in some of the crazy criminal things that go on in LA. But I think when we think criminals, we think a lot of the low level characters. You were mentioning before about the crime families in New York, which those guys are heavy hitters. Did you get to chase any of the more big time or like people we don't necessarily look at as criminals right away? Like the kind of, because the really good criminals are low key. They're behind the scenes. They're not flexing about it 24/7. Was that anything that you got to tackle? Because I'd imagine LA has some dirty stuff going on.
Everything's going on in LA and pretty much every major city. I mean, staying in a hotel, you don't realize that even the 5-star hotel, staying at a Ritz-Carlton or something, you don't know all the nefarious things that are going on there. It's ridiculous. So you have, of course, your prostitution and drug dealing, but then there's on the other side of the house, you have corporate espionage, you have intelligence operations. There's so much going on in a hotel. It's ridiculous. It would make your head spin. So I was lucky enough to work with the FBI in what's called the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
Wow.
And it's a task force with that stood up with partially the FBI and then detectives from all different agencies. So we worked with guys in CIA, DEA, sheriff's departments, U.S. Army, just like kind of like the best of the best from all these different agencies that could bring their little expertise to combat terrorism. So I was lucky enough to be a part of that. And I was assigned to working specifically matters with Hezbollah and things against the government of Iran, so focusing on that. So
what business did Hezbollah have in Los Angeles?
Well, we have a huge Iranian diaspora here, so they could blend in.
Did you say diaspora?
Yeah, just a huge population,
okay,
if you will, of Iranians and Lebanese and everything else that goes along those lines out there. And so they come here with ulterior motives and operate. And you have Quds Force, all these different layers of the Iranian government that if they want to flip the switch, if you will, is what we called it. And if we ever went to war with Iran, they already have operatives here ready to go, they already know our vulnerabilities with critical infrastructure, supply routes, what have you, and they could unleash whatever direct action missions that were needed to bring down the U.S. So we were involved in combating that and identifying and dismantling and everything else that goes in with intelligence operations and counter-terrorism efforts for that specific country and region. So it was great to be able to work street stuff and then to be able to work high-level federal matters, and intelligence operations was really something else.
So I think as Americans, we become accustomed to the idea that we're going to constantly be at war, but it's always going to be on someone else's turf. I think we almost have a aura that we're kind of invincible on the homeland, that no one's going to come bring the fight to us on our own land. So tell me more about like how vulnerable we are, and also like, do the Iranians, is it really wise for them to start something here? Like, are we at risk, or what is your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, the thing that makes this country so great is we're so wide open, and we do have so much freedom, and we do welcome foreigners and visitors and refugees and what have you. It's very charitable, noble things, but then it also makes you vulnerable. It creates a weakness, and soft points within your posture, your national security posture. So we constantly have to balance that of that need of people being able to have a free society, but then look at our vulnerabilities. So I'm blanking out. What was your?
So, well, I guess something that I thought additionally of that is, I guess the question was, will people bring the fight to our homeland? Is that a real potential threat to us?
Oh, I mean, yeah, we already saw that at September 11th. I mean, and we had all these operatives that were here that we knew about and we didn't do anything about. So every major country has intelligence operations going on, and we do the same thing. With like you said, we've been at war, I think, since World War II. I think you could really say we've been in a perpetual war with all across the globe. We're really good at war. The U.S. That's our main export, right? We're one of the few countries that creates all this weaponry, and we have it all around the world. Which I don't think it's a good thing. And is it a great thing to be perpetually at war? I mean, there's arguments for, pro and against, but I don't think it's a great thing. Just me personally,
right?
But then you have to understand that these people are at war with us as well, and we have to maintain certain infrastructure to combat that. So every major country, Israel, like I said, Iran, People's Republic of China, everyone's already here in the U.S. and they're running operations against us, whether it's soft or hard. If we do go to war, then they're here and they're going to be operating. So it's a fact.
One of the things that you mentioned in doing some of this work is that you got to collaborate with CIA, FBI, DEA, and kind of a criticism I heard when I was reading the book Hunting El Chapo was he said that it was very hard for the American agencies to communicate well with each other because one didn't want to give up their information and the other wanted to be responsible for actually busting everything. What was your experience with that?
That's very true. It's gotten better, but it's still so many walls and boundaries. It all comes down to ego and then organizational prowess. They trying to compartmentalize information instead of sharing. I've always been the person of like, I'll gather up all this stuff, whatever it is in life, and comic books, car, whatever it is. I have something, and if you're friends with me, you need something here, boom, have it. And the same thing with intelligence. I gather up all this intelligence. I debrief all these people. I gather all this signals intelligence. It's only good if I disseminate it. If someone acts upon it, it's like I have all these baseball cards in a closet, but if no one's actually looking at it and wow, you got this, you got that, no one's enjoying it. It's paper. It's not anything really valuable. So I always thought of it the same thing with intelligence and information is I gather it and you take it and do something with it. But a lot of organizations, when it comes down to an individual, they feel powerful. I have all these marbles and you don't have any. I'm going to boost up my self-esteem and ego and not share that information. And we see what happens over time and time again when you don't play nice with others. So yes, there are a lot of boundaries. There's a lot of different motives of different agencies of what they want to get out of these different task forces. And again, the American people are the ones that lose, not the people in the organization per se. So to all my guys watching this, share info. And then selfishly, the more you give people, the more you'll get in return too. So whether it's like charity, you're giving something, you're going to feel good too.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be about that. You shouldn't give with the thought of feeling better about it, but that's an effect to it. So the more information I would give people, the more I'd get back. Hey, you did a solid by me. Hey, this guy, here's a good tip. Here's this, here's that. And then we all feed each other and it gets better and better. So it should be the same way in society of just the more I make, the more I can contribute. So I just did my taxes and like, okay, how much should you give to charity? I'm like, well, I made X amount of money, this much more this year, so I gave that much more. So I'm always kind of trying to level up and give back. So that's just the way I've always tried to live my life.
One quick thing. Let's see if we go a little bit more. Whatever is directly on a line, I think, because I'm hearing you good, but I'm hearing it a little bit cut out just too.
Okay.
So can you go just say a couple of things?
I'm saying a couple of things
Okay,
right
cool.
now.
So one thing that occurs to me is I think you have an unbelievably tough profession. The stuff that you have to see on a daily basis, the stress, all of that is mind-blowing to me. But I would imagine, especially since the George Floyd has probably been the line in the sand where things have even changed more as far as now public opinion it's been popular. Like if someone my age says, "Oh, fuck a pig," or I hate cops, or it's not a bad. People get a pass on saying that. Like it's a casual thing for them to say.
Yes.
And so walk me through what has it have been like being a police officer the last few years.
I think if I was younger, I'd take it more personal. And I came in post Rodney King. Wow. So that was was quite a bit of turmoil in law enforcement. But now, as I've gotten older, I got more experienced. You gain more confidence and self-esteem. So, and in my life, I only value someone's opinion if I value them, or if I know they have the bona fides to put forth an opinion that really counts. So all this, stuff that you see on social media, or if you're in a riot and people yelling words at you, they don't know who you are. They don't know what you're really about. And they're just voicing their frustration and their anger. And a lot of it's from within. They're living fractured lives, a lot of these people, and they're just they're exercising that right upon you. So I don't take it personal. So
I would imagine, so it's good because it isn't actually personal. They don't know who you are. They can't possibly have a well-formulated opinion about you. But how has that been as far as recruiting efforts in the office? And I imagine it would be a big push to recruit people from the neighborhoods that are having the highest crime. So overall, police recruiting, and then particularly recruiting gentlemen and women from neighborhoods that are most affected.
Well, like I said, with self-esteem and confidence, we're raising a generation where having the most likes gives you value. So being in a profession that you're instantly not liked, how many teenagers and people in their 20s are going to want to enter a profession where now it's just, like you say, it's kind of just mainstream to shit on. So that's a huge stumbling block that we have to overcome. I was making an arrest down in Watts, and a girl was watching us, and I think she was waiting for the bus. So we tried to chat up people in the neighborhood and have fun and just interact. It's one of the best parts of the job, just talking.
Let them know that you're a human.
Yeah, just having fun. Just talking to them, and really smart, sharp gal. So I interact with this 18-year-old kid on the street. And as I'm talking to her, she said, I'm going to college. I want to become a nurse. So I said, fantastic. Nurse is an unbelievable, great profession, very hard, very admirable. We interact with them a lot in ERs and different environments. I said, awesome. You made a great choice. And then she said, well, I actually wanted to be one of you guys, but everyone hates you guys. And I thought, and then she said, I think she added, she's like, I don't want to be hated. And I was like, wow, that it really hit me in the gut. I was like, that is a good, solid, smart girl. And she's like, she doesn't want to be hated. And no one does. But, for me, I mean, especially at this time in life, I'm like, I don't care if you hate me or love me or whatever. I gain my love and friendship from the people that know me. If I encounter people in the street and they like us or whatever, cool, thumbs up. If you don't, whatever. Doesn't mean anything to me. It means next encounter, I got to try a little bit harder if I encounter you. And but for the next generation, it's a huge thing. They want to be loved. They want to have that like button. They want to get that gratification. They want that dopamine. And we're losing that generation, which is it's not a good thing, because that means a lot of agencies start lowering the standards, and you never want to lower the standards. You want to raise the standard. It's like weightlifting. It's like, if you deadlifting 300 pounds, tomorrow I'm not going to go to 200 pounds. I'm going to go for 310. I'm going to go for 350 next week, and what have you. Raise the standard, never lower the standard.
So is this something that leadership within the police department, they are seeing into the future, and I don't know if it's fair to say they'd be panicking at this point, or they understand that there's a huge problem around the corner, but this has got to be a top of mind thing that they're talking about every day. And how are we going to keep things rolling in the years to come?
Yes. Chiefs of police, mayors, again, it goes back to that 4 years of cycles, thinking, hey, let's open up the floodgates, try to get as many people as possible. Was by the next campaign, I have to say, I hired 1,000 cops, look at me. I'm like, no, we have to think long term, because we know what happens. It's an open book test. When you lower the standards, you're going to have low results.
Yes.
And you're going to have corruption, and you're going to have horrible things that are going to set you back maybe 20 years. Like this George Floyd thing that's setting us back. So I say, raise the standards, pay people more, expect more, make it elite. Everyone wants to feel elite.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to strive for that, that greatness. So make it a great job again. And you might suffer for a few years until you get your numbers back and get that reputation of, like, this is an elite organization that I want to belong to. And it'll take you to that next level. it's like anything, like dieting or whatever, or giving up something. Oh yeah, those first couple of weeks doing a new program, a new diet, you're going to be hurting. But then the next couple of months, you're going to have huge gains. So that's what we have to look at, is how do we get those huge gains and think long term.
I certainly think it would be a good idea to make the police force more elite, and then you can recruit from former special ops, former military, athletes. There's a lot of places you can draw from. What about the side of public opinion? Do you think police departments are doing a good enough job of holding their own accountable? Because I think that was a piece of the George Floyd conversation that was interesting, was how do people feel more comfortable that they're not just going to get away with something crazy? From an insider, do you feel like police are properly held accountable if things go wrong?
It changes from organization to organization. There are some organizations, you can almost get away with murder per se. And then there's some organizations, like the one I belong to, people don't know, we get crushed for the littlest of things. I mean,
I saw there was a RICO case against the LAPD at one point.
Yeah, that might have been 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any validity to that, but there was some. You could look at anything, like any large organization, and draw points to it where, like, oh, we could RICO them because you have so many people doing so many different things. So, but anyway, where were we?
So public opinion, being held accountable.
Yes,
because I think, and especially like the most crazy crime-ridden neighborhoods, it is from the outsider looking in, like, taught at a young age, like, these guys are not our friends. These guys are totally against us. F them. How do we change that mentality? Is it possible? And then overall public opinion, how do you improve that of the police?
Well, like I said, there's so many different agencies with different standards. And I mean, it's almost 800,000 cops, I think, municipal cops throughout the U.S. So many different standards. And it would be great if there was one standard and a true disciplinary system where just that the word discipline is like a derivative of disciple. So you want to create disciples and correct behavior. So it's like anything else, like raising kids. You want to correct their behavior, but in a positive way. Yeah. And it's got to be progressive. So if you mess up on the little things, you correct it and show them the way of how to do the right things. And then when someone's not correctable anymore, you got to get them out off the force, whatever job it is. It's like, all right, you're beyond correction. You're doing something that's an overt act that's full of malice, like you see in Memphis. There's no reason for that to go down. That's completely.
That's one of those things that gross. I saw the description of the video. I haven't watched the video. I won't watch the video, but just from reading the comments that took me out of my loop for that part of the day, and it just was absolutely horrific to read about. One thing that comes to mind, and I think there's been different proponents, like, hey, each cop should be a blue belt in jiu-jitsu or should have some wrestling background, because I think the two things that are great about wrestling and jiu-jitsu versus a boxing or Muay Thai, which are fantastic arts also, but they're arts that you can control people without hurting them. You don't have to throw a haymaker to knock them down. You just take them down and you can get wrist control. How much training is there? Like, if you have a suspect that's trying to get away and you're trying to get the cuffs on them, how often is that gone over, and what is the average grappling level within a police force?
Again, it goes, 50 states have 50 different standards. Here in California, the minimum is 4 hours for every 2 years of hands-on arrest and control training, which is horrendous. Yeah, I mean, optimally 4 hours a week would be great. I'd settle for one if we could get that, let alone 4 hours every 2 years. Horrendous. So again, what are you putting in and what are you expecting? And we should never train to the minimum. You're never going to, minimum is the minimum. We want to go to the maximum.
When you read about special forces groups, what makes them so good is the amount of training they have. Like, I read a book about the guy that created Delta Force after he visited the British Special Forces, and he said that when they were training, they could be on the range 8 to 10 hours a day. So they were getting such heavy action to get better. Do you think that would be part of the puzzle of making the police force elite, is having enough time that training is a consistent part of the job?
100%. I mean, they're doing 18-month workups for a 6-month deployment, which is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, that's a great standard to have. So we have to stop policing on the cheap and putting more emphasis on training. And like you said, it's whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, something that you have to overcome resistance, and you're getting into like zone 2 heart rates, and you're not being you're thrust in a fight or flight scenario, and then you train into that where the abnormal becomes normal, where someone that's maybe twice my size is on my back, and I learn how to survive and breathe and get through the scenario. And or if it's opposite, someone's 100 pounds less than me, I'm not beating them into submission. It's not a fight. I'm just effecting their arrest. And it's just business as usual. That's I train under the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu here in Torrance, the Gracie University. So fighting is, it's like drinking coffee. It's just normal. And so when it happens in the street, I don't take it personal. It's just like a walk in the park, and I'm not looking to beat him into submission. I could just sit on him for about a minute until he wears out.
Everyone's tough for the first 30 seconds or so,
right?
Huh?
Right. If you could survive that 1 minute, the 30 seconds, and then you just hold on to him, and then when you're done, I've laughed. I'm like, all right, you done? You're being an idiot. You're okay. We're going to cuff you. It's no big thing. We'll get you something to eat, get you something to drink. Yeah, I'm done, boss. I'm done. Okay. I'm going to roll you over and cuff you. Nothing personal, because I do it every day, so my heart rate's not racing, and it's not a challenge to my ego, because I know, because I don't take anything personal. He's not fighting me. He's just scared. He wants to get away. So
I see some of these cop interaction videos. I just saw one yesterday where a guy was making a traffic stop, and then the guy got out of his car and then started going towards the gun. And I don't know how someone doesn't. I mean, it would be hard not to panic in that situation. Have you ever had an encounter where, because sometimes when you're doing something, like if you're going to give a public speech, you're about to compete, sometimes your body reacts really well, and other times it sabotages yourself, and the heart rate's up, your breathing's a little shallow. Have you ever gone through a situation where you're like, this is, my body's almost out of control, and it got very scary for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, your body's going to excrete two things, adrenaline, or it's going to excrete cortisol. You want it to excrete adrenaline. It's going to give you better focus and everything else that goes along with it. You can do a deep dive into that. So yeah, I've definitely been in some incidents where I was like, all right, we're gonna have to kill this guy, and I don't want to. We're doing an undercover operation where my undercover cops were buying narcotics down in South Central, and doing a regular transaction. But then, unbeknownst to us, on the other side, someone was getting to a beef with someone, and we see a gun being pulled out of a trunk. And so now our focus is on this. We have two different scenarios at once, and like, hey, we got to get this guy. This is more important. So we wrap up the drug deal, and then we start chasing after this guy. So long story short, we chase him kind of like into a dead end type of area, and he starts running up an apartment building catwalk, and then he's starting to try doors on different apartments, and everyone's door's locked. So he's got nowhere to go, and then he starts walking down to the steps towards us, and so we have our guns out. We're telling him, hey, go with the program, put your hands up, all the stuff that you see on TV. And he's looking at me, and he's sizing me up, and he's like, you could see the wheels turning, like he's going to go for it. He's like, all right, can I take these guys? Do I want to throw it all away? And he's like, fuck it, I could see him. I go, here we go. I'm going to have to dump this guy. So he lifts his T-shirt, and I see a rifle stock. Usually it's, I thought it was a pistol, and he starts pulling out this rifle stock. So with a pistol, it's a quick removal, and then boom, someone could drop around on you really quick. I know with a rifle, it's going to take a little longer to manipulate and point it. So these are things that the public doesn't understand. Like, we had all the right to shoot immediately.
Sure.
And but due to the training and being in these scenarios before, we got some time, try to talk this guy down. And so as he's pulling his rifle out, like, dude, don't do it. Don't do it. We don't want to kill anyone. We're a life-saving organization.
Yeah.
We want to save this guy from himself. And then finally he thought, he's like, he knew. We were like, we're ready. We don't want to do it, but I'm ready. Well, I'm going to drill you, and we're going to put an end to this. If it's you and me, you're going, buddy.
Yeah.
And he saw that in our eyes. And he's like, fuck it. And just, and then proned himself out. It's kind of full-size rifle secreted in his pants. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And that was when you're feeling that all that adrenaline's coming through. And it's like, oh man, here we go. This is the day I've been training for. I don't want to do it, but we're ready. So
these things can happen so fast. What are the rules of engagement? Is it as soon as their hand makes contact with the gun? Is it as soon as the shirt comes up? How do you know when it's okay that he's gone past the line and we have to protect the community, yourselves? Where do you draw that line?
It's very subjective. What's a danger to you isn't a danger to me.
So there's not a standard. Like as soon as hand makes contact with gun, it's open season. Like there's not a policy or procedure into when.
You really can't, because like I said, what I perceive as a threat and what someone else perceives as a threat, it's two different things. So you can't have all it has to be is someone, more or less in layman's terms, is this guy possibly going to use something that can cause great bodily injury, seriously bodily injury or death? It's like, all right, he has a pistol, he has a gun, he has a knife. Is he capable of using that right now that's going to kill you or maim you? Well, yes. So those seconds of whether he's grabbing it, pointing it, running with it. Even if you're running with it, you got a gun in your hand. It's real easy to do this and clip someone. That's up to you. It's you have to articulate that. Were you in danger? And that's the art of policing. Unfortunately, I've had guns pulled on me in the past as a kid, and so I'm uncomfortable with violence. I know how I can move, and I know I could read someone. I could see what their threat, if they're really going to do it or not. And so I get that. Yeah, that gives you that time. And then if you have cover, if you have a little bit of distance, so it's a real art to it. There's no one size fits all. So, but that's a thing the public sometimes just doesn't see. They're not aware of that. So, like, why did that guy have to? He only had he only had the gun in his waistband. He didn't pull it out. He didn't point it at you. It's like it takes milliseconds to pull that gun out, and you have to react to their reaction.
Do you almost feel like the police have to be on the defensive because even something that seems entirely justified, for example, there was a famous case in Milwaukee, this gentleman named Sylvia Smith, black guy running away from a black cop, which that later got changed in the narrative, and that's why the city started burning, is because they just said it was a white cop. But the guy was running, he was armed, and there's a freeze frame when he turns with like an Uzi towards the cop, and the cop takes care of business. And that was what rioted the city. And to me, like, I think there's definitely, like, you look at the Eric Garner case, that was total nonsense. The guy got strangled to death for selling loose cigarettes on the street. Like, that to me, like, you have to look at it case by case, right? It's not a one size fits all. But some of these cases seem so obvious of like, well, duh. I mean, he pointed a gun at police. He's going to die. Do you feel like almost every instance is you guys are on the defensive because no matter what the guy does, you're going to be perceived as the bad guy?
Yeah, everything's on the defensive. I mean, you're walking up on cars, you're knocking on doors. I mean, it's pretty much you're going into...
But in the aftermath, after the guy has been taken out for a pretty obviously justified reason, do you still have to feel like you have to go the extra mile to explain yourself because public opinion is going to assume that you did the bad thing?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's probably what got us into the situation was not explaining the why or educating people about lag time and distance management and everything else. I mean, it's a big thing now of having people, different politicians or people that are in governing positions being placed in like force option simulators, kind of like paintball type of thing, to show how hard it is to react to someone's reaction. And or having displays of, I have a knife, and they're like, well, what can you just use the taser or whatever, and to show someone like how fast someone could clear the distance and get up on you within 20 feet and harm you. Like no one really knows that unless they're shown that. So I see both sides. So we have to take ownership of our profession and show, this is what, these are our capabilities, and then this is what happens on the street and what's possible. So we have to really do a better part of educating the public. So, because they have all these false perceptions through, Hollywood movies and what have you. So
now, speaking of the other side, have you ever had to report a dirty cop incident? Have you ever gotten to witness, like, I can't believe I just saw my guy in the force do that, and I have to report or get him off? Like, what is that like on your end? Because I'd imagine even thinking to report your own puts you in a uncomfortable or even dangerous situation because that's your brotherhood, that's your group. What does that look like?
Well, it's really easy. They're not my own. Once you commit a crime, you're not one of us. You're a criminal. So I want you out of here. And so even if that, falls to like just someone that doesn't cut the mustard as a recruit, as in a training mode, like, hey, not everyone could do this job, and it's not the worst thing in the world. There's other professions out there. So if you can't cut this, you can't rise to the standard, you got to go. So I had no problem, once we tried to get that person up to that standard and they didn't make it, we gave them every option. Hey, buddy, be a loan officer instead of a police officer. So we got to get rid of people. And so if someone committed a crime, very easy. It was not even, think about it. I had to do it. And is it fun? No, but it's necessary. And because one person could tarnish, as we've seen in Minnesota, one person could tarnish not only the police department, but the whole profession.
Yeah.
Everything's global now. It's not even national. So
is there an instance that sticks out in your memory of where you saw something that really wasn't going on right? I'm not just not being a proper recruit or not having the proper physical standards, but really saw something dirty, and then walk me through how that all transpired. You call your captain, you call this, how does that work?
Yeah, this thing relates to a national security issue, so I can't. I'm still bound by classification. I can't do that, but yeah, I had to do that for a law enforcement officer, and yeah, it's a huge ripple effect. You call that your first initial supervisor, like, hey, this you have a seat, you have some coffee there, as we're in for something, and then boom, it skyrockets to the highest level. And
how fast did that issue get taken care of by the department?
It's immediate.
They're fired that day?
No. I mean, it gets handled, and then it has to go through a process. So different cities, like in states, like in Tennessee, it's a right-to-work state. So there's no union. You have no union protection. So if you fuck up, you're gone tomorrow, which is a good thing or it could be a bad thing.
Yeah.
If you're just thrown to the wolves politically and you did the right thing, now you got to fight for your job back. But like the thing that went down in Memphis, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
But in California, where it's a union state, so it has to go through the disciplinary process, which is frustrating for some from the outside. Like, this guy's a bad cop, and we know that. Why is he still home on administrative leave, sometimes with pay, without pay? And people don't understand that. It's like
it's state by state, the procedure.
We're bound by a disciplinary process. It's like same thing of someone gets arrested for murder. It's like, if you just kill someone on video, we know you did it, but you still have to go through a trial and go through the whole process. You can't just be executed tomorrow. It might be 20 years. So same thing with law enforcement firings. It's very frustrating, but that's the system that we've been dealt with, for better or worse. There's pros and cons to it. So,
have you ever walked back into the office after making, coming, kind of being the whistleblower of sorts and getting really negative feedback? Like, man, why'd you do it to Ralph? Ralph was our guy. Did you ever experience negative effects of telling the truth and doing the right thing?
No, because everyone, it takes courage to do that. And but then people are relieved. Sometimes they knew it was the right thing to do, but they just didn't have the balls to do it.
Yeah.
And then it kind of relieved, like, yeah, you know what? Screw that guy. That guy was a piece of crap. Good on you. And because it just makes our job harder. And then no one wants their job hard. It's hard enough. So it's a little known fact that in my department, in NYPD as well, the most internal affairs investigations were all triggered by employees. I don't know why we don't put that out there. God bless you.
Thank you.
We don't put that out more, but we've initiated more internal affairs investigations. It's not from the outside, from the public. It's from within, and that's where it should be. Get rid of people the minute you know about it, and initiate that process. So,
do you think enough is done to help an officer through their career, in the sense that you're witnessing? You see the worst of people every single day. You see domestic abuse. You see a guy on meth that's trying to kill you. You see pimps, prostitutes. You see all sorts of unspeakable things on a regular basis. And I would imagine that's got to affect your mental health, particularly if you were justified in killing a guy. That's something you have to carry with you for the rest of your life. Do police departments have enough mechanisms on the side to make sure that these guys are staying healthy mentally once they experience things like this?
It's getting better, but it has a long way to go. It's just a generational thing. When it came up through the 90s, everything was the suck it up mentality.
Yeah.
And one of the good things I think with the, like the millennial generation, Gen Z, being raised on social media where you're expressing your views and how you feel and what have you, you're getting that out. And I think that's a good thing, to be emotional, to be mentally stable and have the confidence and the courage to say, yeah, I'm having a bad day. I need some help. That's a great thing. So that's not how we were raised in my generation. And that's, it's going to manifest itself in other ways with drinking or just destructive lifestyle. So, but as those generations are getting pushed out and the new generations are coming up, especially a lot of the guys that were in 20 years of combat, we saw what works and what doesn't work. There's more people out there looking. It's okay to get help. It's okay to sit down with a shrink. It's not looked down upon. It's looked as a strength now, and it's just a different way of tackling problems. Instead of sitting in a bar about it, let's have some coffee and have a conversation about it. Do it.
You were talking about making the police force elite, and if I'm looking at an elite employer, let's just say at Google, they have nice catered lunches, they have different areas to nap and relax. So if you were making the LAPD elite, I know we're talking about training and all of that too, but what would you add to, and this, let's just say you have an unlimited budget, what kind of things would you add to make it a more holistic, well-rounded experience for the officer?
It's funny you mentioned that they had the Powerball thing going on not that long ago, and I was telling my lieutenant my dream was if I ever had won the lotto or just came into an excess amount of money, I had a dream of making like my ultimate station house. And what that would consist of is having 24/7 in-house chef just making the best meals imaginable, all healthy.
Healthy, nutritious, wonderful.
Yeah, no garbage. Having the best gym with ice baths and saunas, and having an in-house psychiatrist there, where it's just then there all the time, and so it's someone that you just know, and you don't have that stigma of I got to sit on the couch with some weird person I don't know, and just having the ultimate pimped out, like the best. The paint on the wall, everything affects your work environment. When you're working in, especially like a semi-permissive area, it just looks horrible. And then that translates to your attitude, the cars beat down, everything's a beat down. So you just start reflecting your environment. So if you have a really clean station house that's upkept, where, you could walk by and, with a white glove, and it just makes it, you're proud to work there. That's my dream. If I ever come into a amount of money, and then I'm gonna I'll be the benevolent dictator of say who works there, who gets to come in and what have you. And I just want the perfect environment, because you're gonna get the maximum effort from all your employees if they feel good, if they're sleeping well, they're eating well. Everything else translates to that. And
so if you were recruiting and you were treating it like an NFL franchise where you're trying to pick the best of the best, where are the pockets that you would be looking at to bring people on from?
Definitely people that have been overcome resistance. So, like you said, elite athletes, people that did, that worked in the Peace Corps, that went abroad. People that have traveled, have seen different things. People that have really belonged to something that's greater than themselves, because they know. The job is the purest form of protecting and helping people. So how did you demonstrate that in the past? Someone that just had a 4-year degree, it's like, great, okay, it's tough to get a degree, but that was more for you. Show me what you've done, and were you in the Peace Corps, or did you volunteer at the Salvation Army? Like, those are the people I really want.
Now, we're in a society where it would be, to me, to recruit someone from the Peace Corps, the Salvation Army, probably personality-wise and even politically, there might be people that wouldn't normally join a police force. Do you think how could you recruit somebody like that? Because it would definitely be good to have that kind of new blood in there.
Well, you just got to go past the stereotypes. We're not out there just, beating people's asses and kicking down doors. Yeah, that's a portion of it, a very small portion of it. But a lot of it is just having conversations, talking with you're in a domestic violence type of call, and then there's these kids there. Now, how do you translate that? You're going to take their father to jail, and then how are you going to relate to that kid that it's a good thing or it's something that's needed? You need someone that's been through some of the that could really communicate very well and that's seen things and that really cares. You want a caring person. All the rest of the stuff, the technical things, fighting, shooting, all that we could teach them, but you can't teach someone how to really care and to mean it as well. So that's the type of people I want to look at. So coaches, what have you, athletes, people in the military, just people of service.
So we're talking a lot about what we would do within the police department to make it excellent. One thing I think about a lot, though, is how do you impact these communities that are really, really struggling? Because I think Americans, if you're a true American, you want everybody to win. Mm-hmm. And there's clear sections of people that a lot of the people in the hood are very much struggling, and there's so much potential there. But for whatever reason, things are just really tough. It's economically depressed, and people are living much tougher lives than they could be. If you were mayor of a place like Los Angeles, what would be your focus, and how would you go about starting to turn the tides of change in a place like South Central?
Right. I mean, it's like anything else. Like go back to weightlifting. If you're weak in a certain area, you're gonna have to target a certain area and throw all your resources on that. It's like I can't. Yeah. I'm horrible at pull-ups. What I'm gonna do? I'm gonna try to do pull-ups every day and overcome that. So you have violence, and you have impoverished people, and you have disgruntled, disenfranchised people. Pour all your resources there. Like if it's in a city like LA, I mean, there's a lot of rich areas and a lot of good middle class areas. Like, hey, they need resources too. But when you have certain areas that, like in South Central, what are we doing about that? So, sinking as much money as you can smartly. Not wasting money. So how many parks do you have? How many trees do they have? Do we have, good, cooler neighborhoods? Environmental design, that plays a lot into it. Like I was saying, back to Station House, if it looks like shit, people are going to treat it like shit. They're going to feel like shit and what have you. So what are we doing to remove graffiti? What are we doing to get new, giving incentives to entrepreneurs to start companies down there, tax incentives, whatever it is that could prop up these areas need to be done. And how are we going to draw all these people that are on, public assistance, get them into jobs. So I think these different programs, sports programs, there's so much to do. I mean, it's like, it's sinking resources. That's all it is. Smartly, being strategic with it.
I think that's a big part of it is smartly, because I think a lot of people are concerned that if you enable the local government to spend more of their money, that it's going to be a waste. Like, for example, in Milwaukee, they spent $500 million on a trolley system that nobody uses, and they thought it was going to be some tourist attraction that you were going to want to travel to Milwaukee to be on, and they're doubling down. They're going to spend another $200 to $300 million more to bring it to the next level, which is nothing. And the north side of Milwaukee, if you go down certain streets, maybe 7 out of 20 houses are boarded up. I mean, it looks like a hurricane hit some of these places. And to me, if I was mayor, I would have taken that $800 million, recruited manufacturing firms, because there was a strong middle class in the 70s when the auto firms were here, different manufacturing groups. And then they went overseas to Asia, to Mexico, and all these people that had solid jobs all of a sudden just got wiped out. And so I think, would you agree that also doing a heavy recruiting of proper, good jobs is also a really important part of the ingredient here?
Yeah, I mean, just in high school, just having shop classes and all these different trades, we're in such desperate needs for people that could do, real labor, of electricians and carpenters and all that. It's like, why not have after school programs where kids could learn, like, hey, do you want to build a go-kart? You want to build, whatever it is that's cool, that's going to turn you on. All right, here's a coach, and here's a high-level carpenter or an electrician or whatever, a mechanic. You want to build, a hot rod. Let's do it. And do that after school while this kid's mom is working her ass off trying to, do the right thing. But instead of this kid running around the streets, he's going to be linked up with a coach and someone that has the technical expertise that's going to coach them and mentor them and give them a real trade. I think would be a beautiful thing. And then even back to the beach thing, like, why don't we have city buses just dedicated to, hey, at 4:00 every day, you could be on this corner, and we're going to take you down to the beach, and we're going to have some swim coaches there available, and we're going to teach you how to swim and how to surf and what have you. I mean, that's real things that give people a skill, gives them a purpose to live, and it gets them out of their environment, and it's going to build them up. And so you could do that on the physical side, you could do that on the mental side. So many creative ways, but unfortunately, a lot of city governments treat it as like a corporation. How could they make more money? And they get into it for the wrong purposes. And again, it goes back to it's about us. It's not about one person. So we have to hold our politicians accountable and demand more because the ways of doing things aren't working. And so I think that as the new generations come about, we're gonna have there's some really good leaders out there that are doing some really creative things. It seems like, and we have to break through. That's the bottom line. Another
common theme that we see in nearly every city we visit is the common statement of these kids have nothing to do. I guess I don't know if there's a lack of funding in after-school projects, but I know, for instance, in the wrestling world, I've been in a lot of different high schools and middle schools in the Milwaukee area, and when I'm in the nicer area, it's like state-of-the-art or brand new mats, there's pull-up bars, there's this and that, and then you go to some of the hood schools, and it's like this cracked little mat that's hard, and it doesn't feel good to be taken down on. And so what do you think as far as is that a correct statement? There's nothing for these kids to do, and what would you do in the after-school program area to make it better?
I mean, look at, like in LA, how many professional teams that we have, and how much they could do for, how much money they generate, but where is that money going to? Even if they just siphoned off a couple of percent to give that back to, every neighborhood had legitimate basketball courts that were free of debris, a net that was an actual net, not like when you go to the hood and it's freaking chains or nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to inspire anyone. And to have, have coaches volunteer their time to go down there and give back. I mean, you're taking so much from these cities with tax incentives and everything else, and these salaries. Give back a little bit. It doesn't take much. So
I'm going to be out of my element a little bit here when I discuss these economics, but from my understanding, a lot of these sports stadiums are entirely taxpayer funded. Like, there's some billionaire character that owns the team, but the taxpayers pay for the building of the stadium. Yet when we walk in, it's $7 waters, $8 hot dogs, and we don't get, like, we're in and this is in healthcare, this is in other places too, where the citizens fund the creation of this, just like the vaccines, but the corporations privatize the profits on the back end. It would seem very acceptable to me to say, all right, we're going to front you all this money for the stadium. And yes, it's going to provide jobs, it's going to provide action in the city, but a certain amount of the profits should be allocated towards community outreach. Do you think that would be a reasonable thing to push?
It's a beautiful thing. And it's smart too. If you raise better citizens, they're going to work more, they're going to get paid more, and that's going to be feeding back into your organization or a city. It rises all the boats up, and it's a smart thing. The less people you have on the dole, the better off everyone is. Like I said, it's like you're giving and you're getting a return. You shouldn't ask to get a return, but you're going to get a return on your investment. So, like in Inglewood, that had a profound effect on the neighborhood of the Rams coming into town, and real estate went up and jobs and what have you. But what else are they doing? Maybe they are. Maybe I'm just not aware of it. But across the city, like you said, these cities are giving them sweetheart deals. But why not mandate a certain amount of, hey, let's turn these different parks into like mini little stadiums and have all these programs for things to do after school. Like you said, after school, I didn't have a wrestling program. I didn't have a water polo. There's all these different things I've encountered later on in life that I knew other kids had access to. I was like, man, I wish I had that. I was throwing rocks at cars after school, just being a knucklehead. Thankfully, later on, I got into a band, and music was my outlet. and it kept me out of trouble, being in a band and playing an instrument. But luckily I had a part-time job where I worked my ass off to buy a guitar and get an amp. But some kids, there's no part-time jobs in their neighborhood. I just happened to get lucky with some different places and got hooked up. But if you don't have that, you're not going to have that access. So even in the playing field and giving kids access, I mean, it's so beneficial across the board. So
it seems absolutely essential to the development of a kid to have them in something that's greater than themselves. So whether it's learning how to play guitar and sharing the love of music with people, or learning the sport of wrestling where they get all the self-confidence and drive. But we've talked a lot about the after-school activities. What about the actual public schools themselves? Because it seems like there's something missing there. I don't know if it's the curriculum or the class sizes are too big, but it doesn't seem like education is highly prioritized in some of these areas where, in fact, if you're the smart kid, you're the nerdy kid, you might get your ass beat for trying to be smart. Walk me through that a little bit.
Well, it goes back to we were discussing earlier, just environmental design. Like some of the schools out here, if I showed you a maximum security penitentiary and I showed you a school, it'd be hard to differentiate which one was which. So I went to Catholic school, grammar school, before I got kicked out of fighting, and it looked like a school. It looked really nice, very well built. And I went to public school, and it looked like I was going to jail. I felt like I was in jail there. And then once you get into that an environment, what are we feeding the kids while we're there?
Yeah.
I mean, nutrition is so important, especially at a young age, and how it affects your mood and attitude. I've got a good friend in Paris, and he walked me through what his kid, how they eat and where they eat. And it was like a round table with real silverware, cloth napkins, and really well-cooked meals.
At a public school?
At a public school that was actual food. And I just remember eating, pizza, just all garbage in my school. And so what is that going to make you feel? We know as adults, I'm going to eat like crap. I'm going to feel like crap. And when I'm driving through the neighborhood or at work, I'm going to treat someone like crap. It all feeds upon each other. So
so some people might say there's the conspiracy hat, like it's all by design. This is what the elites want to have happen. Or is it just by incompetence, lack of resources? Like, what do you think the overlying angle is?
I think it comes down to money, just saving money. Like, let these kids eat whatever. They don't care. It's like, all right, this is our budget. This is where we could shave it off of feeding them crap instead of having a true chef and having real foods that are good for you and going to make you feel good. I just think it's just very short-term thinking.
So another term that's come into the public awareness is food deserts. And I've always wondered, driving through certain parts of Milwaukee, like, why is there no good grocery store? Like, the only thing a lot of these guys are having is, like, they wake up, they're having juice, soda, chips, Fritos. That's just, like, from start to finish of the entire day, absolute garbage in their body. And part of me wonders, like, if it is all about profit and money, if a grocery store could make money there, they absolutely would be there. But I'm wondering if it's the theft is so high, they have to pay extra security. Like, what do you think is keeping good grocery stores from being in these tougher neighborhoods?
I think a lot of it has to come down to the breakdown of the family. Pops is in prison. Mom has to work a couple of jobs to make ends meet. So, and the way I was reared, not raised, because you raise cattle, I was told. You rear humans. But where my old man was really big on family meals. So he's like, at 6 o'clock, I don't care what you're doing on the street, you're going to get your ass home. Yeah. And for an hour, we're going to sit at a table with plates and everything, and we're not going to shovel down our food. We're going to eat, and then we're going to discuss, how was your day? What did you do? Who did you interact with? What's going on with your friends? What have you? Of having that structure and that discipline of being able to sit down and not having the TV on or having a newspaper on the side, where now it would be phones, whatever. And so when mom and pop isn't around at the house, you're going to go for that quick fix. Just go to McDonald's and grab whatever, or do this, go down to the corner deli or what have you, and just get something. So it's, the first thing you have to correct is the family. You have that a good family structure with that discipline of, we all sit down and we eat and we discuss, and then you learn through that. But hearing your parents discuss items, and whether it's politics or whatever, family dynamics, you sit there as a kid and you listen, and you soak that all in. That's what I did anyway. And then every now and then you would chime in and they would say, hey, shut up. Yes. But no, to have that open dialogue though is really important.
Yeah.
And just, and going from there. So
I grew up in a family like that too. I was a triplet, and every single night we would have a family dinner, and a lot of different competing minds were at the table. So you had lots of interesting conversations, and that was a really big part of our development. Is encouraging the family unit, particular strong fathers in the family, is that ever going to come from the top down? Is that ever going to come from a governmental push, a community group? Or how do you, because it seems like to me it has to come from the roots. It has to start in the individual. So how do you make it cool to be a father?
Well, you said, is it ever going to come from the government? One thing I learned, I tell people, don't expect anything from the government.
Right.
If you get something, great, but don't ever rely on the government for anything.
Yep.
They'll help. They could be of help for sure, but that's only one smart part of the equation. It has to come from within. You have to take ownership of yourself and your family and your friends, and only one person is in charge of that. So
how do you start that revolution though in the family?
That's the magic question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? It means just through example of people living an abnormal lifestyle becomes normal for them. So how do you break that generational thing? And that has to come from the person themselves, of taking stock of, wow, this isn't the way we should operate. This isn't working out to have, 5 different mothers with 5 different kids, and you're trying to juggle all these different things.
How could you possibly?
Just having one family is tough enough to do it right, and you could even do everything right and it still goes wrong. So, yeah, it has to start at home. And how do you make being a father cool? Just good role models. And I think Chris Rock did a great special on it. He was like, someone bragging about, I take care of my kids. And he's like, motherfucker, he's like, you should take care of your kids. That's not something to be proud of.
Yeah.
It's part of being a person, a good person. So, yeah, how to be a cool dad.
I've had this weird kind of idea that it's like, how could you get all these big rappers to be like, because if you hear, and a lot of these kids are brought up on some of this music from, for the second they're born, it's playing in the house where it's like, it's popular to like, oh, I just kicked the bitch out the car after she gave me head. I don't give her no love. Like treating women like absolute shit, doing constant drugs, doing things that are crazy enough to land you in prison for a long time. And so like, how could you get a rapper? It's never going to happen because it's not marketable, but like how a rapper that's like, staying with your family is cool, treating women right is cool. Like, how do you reverse that? It just feels like the tide right now is so strong in the wrong direction that swimming upstream, it's a miracle to the people that do. I don't know if I'm just...
Yeah, it's just what you consume. It's, how do you get someone, like Hicks and Gracie, someone that's truly a masculine figure, but he's doing, he's got the family side right, he's got the nutrition side right, combat sports, he's doing all these things. Like, all right, that's someone to aspire to. That's taking care of all these things, and it's created a franchise, and then his brother's creating UFC and everything else that goes along with it. Like that's something to aspire to. As far as there's music figures that I aspire to be like, but it was on the creative side. So I could look at someone like Jimmy Page, who in one point of his career in Led Zeppelin, he was a drug addict, but also like disregard that part. Like, hey, I definitely don't want to be a drug addict, but I want to form a band and I want to produce something. I want to be creative, and I want to use all these different tools and philosophies he had and then implement that in my life. So you have to really be a critical thinker to see, okay, this person's a drug dealer, but then he manifested that self in something else and became an entrepreneur, and then he left that behind. I'm like, okay, I get that. And so you have to take the good with the bad. There's a lot of people that are doing bad things but doing good things at the same time. Both could be right, but I don't know. That takes a lot of thought, and I think that's where books come in as well.
Yeah, man.
Being self-educated. Don't rely on schools to educate you. Go outside, educate yourself.
You definitely seem like a strong optimist, which I think, being someone from what you've seen, just shows your character and how you're built. Where do you see things going as far as the hood seem like they're getting worse and worse? the mood of the country right now, it seems like we're in a big rut. Politically, it seems like we're more divided than ever. Although, if you read history, they always act like that. Where do you see things going, and are you optimistic about the future?
I am cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my default state. I'm like optimistic, but then got to be realistic as well. So I think we are moving forward in society in different ways and then falling back in other ways. You know, obesity rates going up, literacies, going down. So it's like we take a couple steps forward, and it seems like we take a couple steps back. So I think we have to bring back self-accountability is a big thing. It seems like being a victim nowadays is glorified. And it's like, people get victimized, but let's move forward. The tools are out there to accomplish these tasks, and it's not to be glorified, to be constantly victimized, and woe is me. It's like, okay, we get it.
It's hard to think of anyone that has a victim mentality that's doing well.
Yeah, it's not acceptable. It's like you get knocked out, get back up, do as much as you can to get back up, and don't stay down. That's not cool. We all get knocked down, but
what do you view as proper punishments to be given out? Because I think when we look at prison time, I know a gentleman that he killed someone when he was 19 in Milwaukee, did 20 years. He got out. He's doing fantastic. He's speaking to kids. He's a trucker at his own firm too, so he's hiring other truckers. He has a clothing line coming out. He had a barbershop at a point too. He's the classic guy that you would hope comes out, but he's the exception.
yes.
What do you think? This is maybe a really tough thing to answer, but are we giving people too much time, or is that the proper amount of time that they need to think? And then what could be done differently within the prison system that we have a higher success rate when they come out?
Well, I think this country has to have a real deep dive into what's rehabilitation and what's just punishment.
Right.
It seems like to me we're just more of leaning on the punishment side, which for someone that's a violent individual that killed someone, yes, they need to be sent away for a good amount of time. But while they're there, are we creating a more dangerous individual, or taking apart his manhood and just decimating him, or are we going to build him up? I mean, this country is founded on Judeo-Christian of background of redemption and reconciliation and creating disciples. And I'm not a religious guy, but was raised Catholic, and I believe in forgiveness.
Yeah.
And but you also have to have consequences. So while people are incarcerated, yes, they're there, so that's their punishment. They can't come out for a while. But while they're there, what skills are they attaining? When they come out, they're going to come out eventually. And do you want a more productive person, or do you want a more sinister person?
We need to get them into the trades, man. We need to have that. I feel like that should be a strong part of the prison system, because especially with the younger generations coming up, I do a lot of real estate in Milwaukee, and the contractors are mostly in their 40s and older. It's rare that I bump into a guy that's in his 20s starting his own crew. And when those guys start phasing out of the workforce, who is going to fix my furnace? Who is going to fix that roof? And I think a lot of the guys that are in prison, a lot of them are natural entrepreneurs. And so if you just connect their natural skill set of being an entrepreneur and a good hustler to a skill set that the society desperately will need, such as the trades, electricians, plumbers, HVAC, I feel like that would be a fantastic way to bring people back and reintegrate them into a career that's going to provide well for them, well for their family. Is that something that is even possible to integrate into the prison system, or is it such a profit-based system that that's going to eat into the bottom line too much? We're not interested.
Well, it's just so easy to just stick someone in a cell and forget about them. It's a lot harder to build them up. They're adults, but in a lot of instances, they're just children now. They're man-children. So why not, give them, assign them something that's going to give them value. It's going to give them confidence, and it's something to look forward to once they do get out. Instead of just freedom, it's like, well, when I get out, I actually have possibilities. I have skills. I have all these different things of different trades, and yeah, that's a beautiful thing, because, like I said, they are going to get out. So And then we have to look at, how do we look at people that were felons and incarcerated? You already have like 2 strikes against you when you're going into the workforce. So how do we approach that? I mean, it's not only like the system itself, it's society, how we view people that fucked up in the past. And like I said, we believe in, of redemption and comeback stories. Everyone loves the underdog story.
Yeah.
And why not translate that to people that have done things? Now, I get hit with, well, people doing rapes and this and that. Like, yeah, we get that part, but, people that are there for, white collar stuff, theft, or, low level things, burglaries or what have you. It's like those people, they're salvageable. People are really salvageable.
It seems largely
leadership,
environmentally based. Like if you just place this guy into a different environment, he wouldn't be doing a lot of that same stuff. And you gave him a different outlet, he'd be doing a lot better.
Inherently, people are good. They don't want to be
right.
idiots. They don't want to be violent, but it's fear-based. It's just the default state of lashing out because they're just very angry and misguided. But man, at its core, people are good. They want to do the right thing. So if you just give them that outlet, they're going to do the right thing for the most part. You got your outliers and, predators out there for sure. And those are the guys that have to be slammed down because they're going to come out. And we know their recidivism, the recidivism rate of, like sex crimes is through the roof. So those certain individuals just really tough to deal with. So keeping them away from society is a good thing. But even while they kept away in the prison system, you don't have to keep punishing them and crushing them. And of course, people commit more crimes while they're in prison. They're doing the same thing. It's just within a controlled environment, committing rapes and everything else, extortion, what have you. So they're just not doing it upon regular society, but they're still creating turmoil within the prison and jail system.
Well, talking to a guy like you is extremely refreshing. It makes me positive about the future, and lucky that we have guys like you out here doing what you're doing. Is there anything in particular that you're working on, anything that you want to plug, anything that you want to drive the people towards that may watch this?
No, I mean, I do, but nothing I really need to talk about or want to talk about, but of just, how do we propel society? And it doesn't take much. You see a friend in need, people out on the street, different interactions. Every interaction really helps, whether it's, something direct, or it could be, just simple things of just being a good person, being kind. Buying a coffee for someone in line, it could change someone's trajectory of their day, where they were going to lash out at something, and now you just uplifted them. Like, oh, I feel cared, I feel valued for. So the little things that you do throughout the day really, really count, and they really do add up. And then the bad things that you do throughout the day really add up and can have an effect upon people. So, being a mentor, getting a mentor, even if you're at the top level, whatever your profession, is always someone out there that's willing to help, that will get you better. And these things are for free. It doesn't cost you anything to just invest in your neighborhood, picking up something on the street, little things. There's so many things that you could do that'll make you feel better, that are going to make your neighborhood better. And for me, it's all about setting up for the next society, of the next generation. Like, how could I get the people within my profession to do better than me? How could I get my neighborhood to look better than what it is? And how do we prosper? Because when you're dead and gone, I mean, it's you can't, they don't have the U-Haul truck with all your amount of possessions, but if you have that lasting effect on people, I'd say, this guy Tommy, he taught me this, he taught me that, or I learned this from him, and that spreads through generation to generation. That's huge. That's a life worth living.
I think we're in a day and age where we can get really caught up in wanting to have these massive undertakings. And if it's not a Instagrammable post of I've raised $1 million, we're not going to go out and raise $10 because we feel like it doesn't matter. But truly, most of life is the simple, the mundane, the average, everyday tasks. And that's the little microtransactions that happen between us as humans is really where we have the most impact. It's because we can't boil the whole ocean, but we can boil our little pot in front of us. And so if we can smile at people, buying them a little coffee, these little things can totally transform our world. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I've had a great time speaking with you and check him out. Is there any way for people to find you?
Yeah, you can go on Instagram. My nickname's Nako, so at KNOCKO, or on Twitter, Nako Nolan. And if you need help with whatever, or just questions about law enforcement, or just want to chop it up, hit me up. I'm more than happy to help.
Give someone a hug. Give someone a smile. Love each other. I'll see you guys next episode. Peace.